February 2011, Wangaratta, Australia. Dan Saunders is an ordinary 29-year-old bartender in a small country town. He's out for a few drinks after a long shift, but there's a problem. His wallet is empty. He walks up to a National Australia Bank (NAB) ATM, hoping he might have enough left for one more round. He knows his balance is near zero, so he tries a desperate move, transferring money from his credit card to his savings account. The screen flashes, transaction canceled, but then the machine begins to buzz. To his disbelief, it spits out $200 in sparkling bills. He tries it again and again. By the time he walks away, he has a pocket full of cash that shouldn't exist. A man with exactly $3 in his bank account just discovered a magic money tree. How is this even possible? What did the bartender do about this glitch? The maintenance gap. Between 1:00 a.m. and 3:00 a.m., the bank's ATMs go offline. They stop talking to the central servers and lose their ability to verify account balances in real time. Dan noticed that during this window, he could perform a credit to savings transfer that the machine would label as canceled. However, because the system was disconnected, the ATM would still credit the local savings balance without checking the credit limit, effectively creating ghost money. Night 1. He withdraws $200. The money stays in his hand, but his actual debt doesn't register. Night 2. He tries $2,000. The machine complies. He realizes he is now $2,200 in debt, but the bank thinks he's in the green. He discovers the shocking effect. By transferring $4,000 the next night to cover the previous $2,000, he can keep the negative balance invisible forever. Picture Dan standing at a dark ATM in a quiet Australian town. He isn't a master criminal, he's just a guy pressing buttons. He's creating a float of fictitious money that exists only in the record of the bank's own servers. He feels like a caveman who has just discovered fire. May 2011, Melbourne, Australia. For 5 months, the accidental millionaire lives a life that sounds like a movie script. The bartender from Wangaratta is gone. In his place is a ghost who spends money like it's going out of style. Chartering flights on private jets to remote islands, buying out entire bars and high-end restaurants, handing out cash to strangers and paying off his friends' university debts. The cost, $1.6 million in total. But the magic money tree had a terrifying requirement. No matter how drunk he was, no matter who he was with, Dan had to find an ATM every night between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. If he missed the window once, the window would close, the debt would settle, and the police would be at his door. June 2011. The adrenaline turns into a waking nightmare. Dan is dreaming in numbers. He realizes he can't stop. He eventually stops the transfers, watches his account drop down into a 7-figure debt, and waits. Dan is still the same guy, but the world has shifted on its axis. He isn't just rich, he is infinite. He is funding the wildest dreams of strangers with currency that was literally pulled from a digital void at 2:15 a.m. Dan's true power isn't the ATM glitch, it's the psychological effect of the number on the screen. He realizes that money is a social lubricant that changes the molecular structure of a room. Dan walks into a bank branch to make a simple withdrawal. The teller looks at the monitor. Her eyes widens, the posture straightens, the professional distance evaporates. Suddenly, she isn't just a bank employee. She is in awe. The facial expression shifts instantly. To her, he isn't a bartender in a cheap shirt. He is a business mogul. He realizes then, being rich isn't about what you buy. It's about how you are seen. Partying with $1 million is exactly as fun as everyone thinks, and that is the problem. It is a high that makes every other human experience feel like grayscale. The money is free. The imagination is limitless. The pitchmen arrive. Every guy has a can't-miss business idea. Every room becomes more beautiful. The opposite sex is drawn to the gravity of the wealth. $1 million+. The digital mirage that bought him a new identity. 0. The amount of effort required to earn it. 100%. The success rate of his social upgrading. But being treated like a god has a dark side. Dan notices the change in body language isn't about him. It's about the cash. He's at a high-end bar. Men are leaning in, whispering investment opportunities. Women are carried away by the presidential suite keycard on the table. He feels like a god, but he's a god with a deadline. He knows that in a few hours, he has to find an ATM in a dark alley to keep the pedestal from collapsing. The more the world treats him like a king, the more he fears becoming a peasant again. 8 hours until the bars close. 5 hours until the maintenance window. 20 minutes to move the numbers and keep the dream alive. April 2011. Dan Saunders is no longer a bartender. He is a ghost story. He's moving through the high-end lounges of Melbourne, followed by a growing entourage of friends and hangers-on. He is the guy who never lets a bill hit the table. He is the guy who always has a play. Half of his friends think he's a financial genius, while the other half think he's a dead man walking. To himself, he's a man desperately trying to remember which lie he told to which person. When you have a magic money tree, you quickly learn that morality is flexible when champagne is involved. Dan's social circle begins to split into 3 distinct camps. A few friends walk away. They see the glitch for what it is, theft, and they want no part of the fallout. Most friends just ride the wave. They don't ask questions. They enjoy the 5-star suites and the private jets, treating Dan like a force of nature they can't control. The inner circle that eggs him on. How much can we get tonight? Can we buy a boat? Can we fly to Europe? Dan isn't only funding a party, he's funding a social experiment. He realizes that as long as the money is flowing, most people are willing to look the other way. May 2011, a high-end cocktail bar. To keep the thin air cash a secret, Dan has to build a legend. He can't tell his family. They would see the trouble coming from a mile away. So, he crafts a series of professional identities. People expect wealthy people to have complicated jobs. The solution was the one-liner identity. Meeting strangers at parties. Every time anyone asks Dan what he does, "I'm in investment banking," he says. Or, "I'm in high-end real estate." He realizes the one-liner is a master key. In the world of the ultra-rich, no one actually cares about the source of the wealth as long as the wealth is visible. He is a man without a past, defined entirely by his current balance. No family member knew the truth. He circled through more than 10 fake careers, 24/7. The amount of time he spent on guard, making sure his stories didn't overlap. The more he lies to the world, the more isolated he becomes. He is meeting hundreds of people, but he has no one to talk to. He is an investment banker by day and an ATM hacker by night. He's at a dinner with people discussing market trends and interest rates. He has no idea what they're talking about. He just nods, orders another bottle of $500 wine, and waits for 1 a.m. He realized that the money didn't buy him things alone. It bought him a mask, but the mask was starting to get heavy. He was a billionaire in the eyes of the public, but a terrified bartender in his own head. June 2011, the Park Hyatt, Melbourne. Dan Saunders is wide awake, paralyzed in a king-sized bed that costs more per night than his old monthly rent. The silence of the luxury suite is heavy. He is living a life that shouldn't exist, fueled by money that doesn't exist. He has $1 million balance, but he is living like a condemned man. He has bypassed the bank's security, but he cannot bypass his own nervous system. Dan learns that while you can hack a ledger, you cannot hack your conscience. After 29 years of being a good guy, his sudden pivot into high-stakes fraud triggers a physical revolt. Anxiety attacks, cold sweats. Every noise in the hallway sounds like trouble. He sees a SWAT team through the peephole in his dreams. He feels the cold steel of handcuffs. The doorbell rings. Dan is ready to surrender. He wants it to be over. He opens the door, heart hammering against his ribs, only to find a maid holding a stack of Egyptian cotton. "Would you like some fresh towels, sir?" The relief of being caught is snatched away, replaced by the crushing weight of having to keep the lie alive for another 24 hours. July 2011. The most terrifying part of Dan's journey wasn't the police chasing him. It was the fact that no one was chasing him at all. Fraud departments look for unusual activity, not impossible wealth. The bank finally calls. Dan's phone vibrates. He answers, certain. This is the end. Bank, "Mr. Saunders, we're calling about some large transactions. Did you just spend $15,000 at a luxury resort?" Dan, "Yeah, that's me." Bank, "No worries, just checking. Have a great day." The bank wasn't looking at the source of the money. They were only looking at the location of the spend. Because he confirmed he was the one spending it, the transfers between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. went completely ignored by the automated audits. 4.5 months, the time it took for a multi-billion-dollar institution to notice a $1.6 million hole. 100%. Dan's heart rate every time a phone rang. $0. The amount of effort the bank spent investigating a bartender with a 7-figure lifestyle. He is trapped in a loop of his own making. He is past the point of no return. He has traveled too far into the glitch to ever find his way back to being a regular guy without a crash. He realized that the bank's security wasn't a wall. It was a door that he had accidentally opened. But as long as the door stayed open, he had to keep running through it. He was a millionaire on paper, but a ghost in the machine, waiting for the lights to finally turn on. June 2011, the private jets have landed. The champagne has gone flat. Dan Saunders is sitting in a room, staring at the Hilton laundry bag stuffed with $80,000 in cash, the remnants of a $1.6 million ghost fortune. The magic money tree is still there, but Dan is exhausted. He is no longer playing a game. He is losing himself. He has the money to disappear forever, to become the guy in the movies who vanishes into a tropical sunset. But he realizes that if he disappears, Dan from Australia dies. He is a man who loves his family more than he loves the glitch. Dan's conscience finally catches up to his bank balance. He realizes that thin air wealth comes with a toxic side effect. It erases your soul. Dan doesn't want the millions if it means living as a shadow. He decides to close the loop. He stops the transfers. He lets the money drop. Corporate embarrassment. Dan calls the bank, expecting handcuffs. He gets a dial tone instead. Dan is on the phone, ready to surrender. He's got the laundry bag packed. He's ready for the sirens. The bank. It's a police matter now. We can't talk to you. You're in a lot of trouble. The result? Silence. The bank hangs up. The police don't call. For 2 years, Dan Saunders lives in a state of digital silence. He has stolen a fortune, admitted to the crime, and offered the money back, and yet the system refuses to acknowledge he exists. $80,000. The cash sitting in a laundry bag, waiting to be seized. 730 days. The time Dan spent waiting for a knock on the door that never came. 0. The number of police officers who contacted him after his initial confession. He tries to move on, but he can't. He's a man caught between two lives. He's the bartender who broke the bank, but the bank is so embarrassed by the glitch that they have buried the file. He realized that taking the money was easy. Giving it back was the hard part. He was a criminal without a cage, a thief without a chase. He realized that if he wanted to be Dan again, he would have to force the world to punish him. October 2014. For 3 years, Dan Saunders has been a living ghost. He has the money, he has the confession, and he has the guilt, but he doesn't have the handcuffs. The bank is silent. The police are nowhere to be found. He is trapped in a confused state, realizing that the only thing worse than being caught is being ignored. He has committed one of the greatest bank heists in Australian history, but he has to beg the authorities to notice him. He isn't running from the law, he is hunting it. Dan realizes his mind is fracturing under the weight of the secret. He seeks professional help to process the $1.6 million issue, but he finds that his story is too big for a standard office. His first encounter leaves him dumbfounded. Psychiatrist, I'm not qualified to handle this. Dan is stunned. If the shrinks won't touch his case, who will? Psychiatrist, a sensible man who identifies the core issue. If you want to move on, you have to force the ending. The therapist doesn't give him a pill, he gives him a mission. To save his sanity, Dan has to destroy his freedom. The bank and the police are too embarrassed to admit a bartender outsmarted a multi-billion-dollar system. Dan stops calling the police and starts calling the newsrooms. Dan walks into the offices of the Herald Sunday. He isn't there to buy an ad, he's there to put a target on his own back. One print story. The world remains silent. 2 more print stories. The police start to sweat. A national TV appearance on a current affair. Dan is sitting under the bright lights of a TV studio, describing the magic money tree to millions of viewers. He is handing over the Hilton laundry bag on camera. He is making it impossible for the authorities to look away. He has successfully hacked the justice system by using the one thing a bureaucracy fears more than a glitch: publicity. 3. The number of years he waited for an arrest. 3. The number of print stories it took to be taken seriously. 8 million. The approximate audience that finally saw his face and forced the hand of the law. The magic trick is finally over. By putting himself on the front page, Dan Saunders effectively forced the handcuffs onto his own wrists. He traded the thin air millions for a concrete cell, finally finding the one thing $1.6 million couldn't buy him: a clean slate. Dan Saunders sat on a mountain of ghost money, contemplating the point of no return. He had the resources to become a shadow, to vanish from the Australian outback and reappear as a ghost on a Mediterranean coast. He was a man with a moral compass, yet he was executing a financial bypass that would make a cartel leader jealous. He didn't see himself as a thief, he saw himself as a philosopher, playing with imaginary numbers. If Dan hadn't walked into that newsroom, his exit strategy was already mapped out. It wasn't about offshore accounts or complex wire transfers. It was about the island strategy. Banks ask questions. Casinos don't. He could have resorted to the casino wash in Mallorca, Spain. Imagine Dan walking into a high-stakes casino in Europe with a suitcase full of thin-air cash. He doesn't play to win. He plays to stay. Casinos are the ultimate black boxes. They don't chat about their clients. They don't report your balance to the NAB. You deposit the glitch money, play a few hands, and withdraw clean winnings. He could have lived a lifetime in the Spanish sun, funded by a bank that didn't even know it was bleeding. To survive 4 months of high-stakes fraud, Dan had to build a psychological fortress. He had to convince himself that he wasn't ripping anyone off. No one called him to say their money was missing. If the bank doesn't miss it, does it exist? It was just numbers on a screen. In Dan's mind, the money didn't become real until he touched it or spent it. Until that moment, it was just a digital glitch. He convinced himself that he wasn't taking a grandmother's savings or a worker's paycheck. He was simply harvesting phantom currency from a system that had forgotten how to count. $0, the amount of real money Dan believed he was taking from actual people. 10,000 plus miles, the distance between his reality in Australia and the ghost life he imagined in Spain. 1. The number of Hilton laundry bags that eventually held the truth. He looks at the stacks of bills. He thinks about the flight to Mallorca. He thinks about the silence of the Spanish coast. He realized he could have been the guy in the movies. He could have outrun the bank, outplayed the casinos, and lived as a millionaire ghost. But the Dan from Australia was too loud to be silenced. He chose the handcuffs over the coast because he realized that even in Mallorca, the numbers would eventually start to get into his head. May 2015, Victoria County Court, Australia. Dan Saunders stood in the dock, prepared for a legal hurricane. He had spent $1.6 million of the bank's money, lived like a king for 5 months, and made a mockery of national security protocols. He expected the book to be thrown at him. Instead, he found himself in a room full of confusion. He had committed a high-tech financial heist using nothing but a plastic card and a 1 a.m. window, but the legal system was still living in the age of paper checks. The judge and the prosecutor looked at the evidence not with fury, but with surprise. Dan realized his greatest defense wasn't a high-priced lawyer. It was the sheer complexity of the glitch itself. The bank provides minimal evidence. The prosecutor struggles to explain the magic transfer logic. The judge stares at the ledger with blank looks. At the end of the day, what we have is Bad Dan. Because no one could fully grasp the mechanics of the crime, the sentence was shockingly light. 111 counts of fraud and theft, 1 year in prison, an 18-month community corrections order. The private jets have been replaced by a mop bucket. The 5-star suites have been swapped for a humble shift behind a local bar. Dan Saunders is no longer a millionaire. He is a man earning $22 an hour, pouring drinks for people who have no idea he once owned the bank. 1 year. The time spent in a cell reflecting on the magic money tree. $22. The hourly wage of a man who once spent $15,000 on a single dinner. Dan describes the transition using a Hollywood metaphor. He feels like Macaulay Culkin post-Home Alone tweppy. 1 minute you're the hottest thing on the planet, and the next, the world has moved on, leaving you with nothing but a hangover of what could have been. Every time Dan wipes down a counter or deals with a difficult customer, a thought haunts him. He thinks about the Mallorca escape. He thinks about the Spanish sun and the casinos that don't ask questions. There's a part of him that wonders, what if? What if he hadn't walked into that newsroom? What if he had stayed the guy in the movies? But then he remembers the cold sweats. He remembers the SWAT team nightmares. He realizes that while he lost the millions, he found his true self again. He isn't a ghost in Mallorca. He is Dan from Australia. The bank eventually patched the glitch, but the legend of the bartender who found the magic window remains the greatest what if in the history of Australian banking.